Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. Sayemontess. The Musty Dungeons. I thank the Lord for saving me from the dungeons. I was there for less than a day, caught up in the labyrinth. I became heartbroken at the sight of many tortured corpses. I prayed for my God to help me. How long must I stay here? Then I remembered I had absinthe, a gift, the perfect gift. I ingested the entire bottle, straight. I could not feel my face. I wanted to cry tears of relief and sadness. Oh, Sayemontess, will you truly be mine? My nipples hardened at the thought. I got goosebumps all over. I quickly became overwhelmed with sexuality. I touched myself here and there. It changed my life. I had never made myself feel so good. Completely intoxicated, I wept. Then, thank you, sweet Jesus. An angel appeared. Prepare yourself. Sayemontess soon shall be yours. Go ahead and touch yourself, for once you are the ruler. You will be touched by many. It will be your duty to produce an heir. I did as instructed, and it felt great. I went to rinse off in the shower, and I heard voices in my head. She hates us straight men. She's openly expressed that she wants to fuck us with dildos, to make us submissive, said one voice. Then I heard another voice say, let's get her when she's alone. What was going on at Sayemontess? I had to get back there. It is true. Sonia was going to overwhelm the male population with sex. Sex. All day, every day, until one produced an heir. The next baby, any baby, would get the crown upon their 13th birthday. She was not joking around. If there was no heir, then it would be off to the gallows with her Richard. It was Richard who found me lost in the dungeons. I would have died down there if he had not searched for me. How did he know I was down here in hiding? Maybe it was Great Leader. Maybe she was alive. Maybe she didn't join the men on the battlefields. Oh my. Oh goodness. Could she still be? Could she still be alive? I asked Richard, how is our Great Leader? Tell me of Sayemontess. Please, please, Richard. Tell me, I ordered, as he led me straight out of the dungeons. His torch was finally made. It shone bright. I cried as I smelled the fresh air. The dungeons were so moldy, so musty. I could not stand it much longer. Had I stayed down there any longer, I would have slit my wrists long ways. For that was the right way to end things. Long ways. Slice through your veins and your tendons. Cut them up, I was thinking to myself. Cut them up. As Richard and I reached the higher ground level of Sayemontess, I shed a tear. I instantly left Richard. I could not help myself. I had to see my great leader. And I did. I saw her huddling with the masses. They were praying to God for the forgiveness of their sins, though they were the ones attacked. I interrupted their prayers. There would be no more asking for forgiveness. Beautiful women, what you did today was not wrong. Halt your voices. Halt your madness. You have reached victory today, and you have saved Sayemontess. Then Great Leader approached me. Then all of the women and Richard rushed over to me. They cheered me on with adulation. "Oh, great new leader," said Samantha, and I screamed, "No, I am and will always be Sonia, and Richard is always to be my guide, my great protector, my knight in chainmail armor. Oh, glorious young knight. Richard, will you join me in my new chambers after I rinse myself, please?" It was time to get busy. Ladies, to the showers. Perhaps we can all make Richard our king. Martha, you were a great leader, but now, can you find new chambers to sleep? I shall find somewhere else to sleep. It is cool weather. Perhaps I shall grab some blankets and sleep on the hard concrete bench next to the fire pit, since there are no more rooms available in Sayemontess, except for in the dungeons. Martha raised her voice at me, her new leader. I was stunned. Why would she do such a thing? I loved Martha, but she did send me to the dungeons when she could have just locked me in the wardrobe up in the attic. She could have had someone deliver me food and water, or she could have done it herself. How dare you raise your voice to me, not 1 minute after giving me all power over Sayemontess? How dare you? I could send you off to the dungeons for a night, or 2 or 20, or more. See what you think of it. While I was down there, I saw your predecessor. She was cuddled up next to a corpse. Is that where you want to end up? I think not. To the gallows with you, I ordered. And just like that, the beautiful women went from loving Martha to hating her. Tar and feather, tar and feather, to the gallows with her, shouted the women in unison. In Sayemontess, you never disrespect your leader. It could be punishable by just the stocks for a lesser offense, then the gallows, then it was execution, much easier than a week in the gallows without food or water. you would pray for rainfall and not get it. Pure and intense suffering. And the mosquitoes at night would make you wish you had never been born. Stuck in your own filth, you could cry out to God all you wanted, but not even He could unlock the locks in the stalks. Strip her and search her right here on the spot. Then lock her away in the gallows until her death. "Wait!" screamed Martha, but it was too late. They ripped off her dress and everything else. They had to drag her through the mud in the rain, way to the gallows. Sludge covered Martha. She looked disgusting and pathetic. The stalks first, the hands second, and the head was locked in third. "Lick at the rainwater. You'll die slower," I said. Then we abandoned her. We went back inside, Sayemontess out of the rain, and we rinsed off in the showers. We met Richard in my chambers, and we all had a good time. Perhaps this would be my good reckoning. Perhaps sweet Richard could give us an heir. I just wish he had a better nose and stronger thighs. Not the best in the bedroom. Richard would die soon at the age of 19, but that is a story for a different day. Good night. Reality checked. Maggie stared out the kitchen window, her brow knitted in quiet contemplation as she waited for her coffee to finish brewing. The sun poured through the window, warm and radiant. Yet something felt off. It had rained throughout the night. She recalled the rhythmic pitter-patter against her bedroom window and the wind wailing through the trees. The forecast had called for more storms well into late afternoon. However, outside, the world looked untouched, as if the night's downpour had never happened. She recalled having drinks with her best friends from college last night at the new upscale lounge downtown. Lori had been eager to check out the exclusive rooftop bar, but the rain had forced them to stay inside. Instead, they gathered in one of the lounge's sleek, dimly lit sections, sipping mojitos and catching up. Lori had always dreamed of becoming a corporate attorney, and after years of relentless studying and grueling internships, she had finally landed a position at one of Pittsburgh's top law firms earlier this year. It was all she had ever wanted, and from the way she spoke about it, the long hours and high stakes didn't faze her in the slightest. Sammy and Chloe also seemed to have settled comfortably into their dream careers. Sammy, with her sharp wit and boundless creativity, was making a name for herself in marketing, crafting campaigns for major brands. Chloe, whom she had known since 3rd grade and always the most compassionate of the group, had pursued a career in healthcare, working as a pediatric nurse, the job she had dreamed of since childhood. As Maggie sat there, she couldn't help but wonder if she was the only one still searching for a sense of purpose, trapped in a routine she couldn't escape. Suddenly, the coffee pot beeped, a sharp, cheerful sound, as if proudly announcing the completion of its task. The abrupt noise jolted Maggie from her thoughts, pulling her away from the window. With a sigh, she grabbed the pot and poured the steaming coffee into her oversized pit mug. She and her friends had bought matching mugs from the university shop, a sentimental keepsake to mark their transition from students to University of Pittsburgh alumni. Back then, they had imagined themselves stepping into bright, promising careers, proudly flaunting their school spirit in their new offices. But as Maggie wrapped her fingers around the familiar ceramic, she couldn't ignore the nagging truth. Her future hadn't turned out the way she once envisioned. Maggie took a sip of her coffee and immediately winced at the bitterness, the sharp taste jolting her from her distracted thoughts. She'd forgotten to add the creamer. Heading toward the refrigerator, a realization settled over her. It was Sunday, grocery day. With a resigned sigh, she set down her mug, shuffled to her bedroom to change, then grabbed her purse and keys and headed out the door. The moment she stepped outside, the air was warm and rich with the scent of sun-soaked earth and blooming wildflowers. No trace of petrichor, no lingering dampness on the pavement. It was as if the storm she so vividly remembered had never happened at all. Maggie swallowed, her throat dry and tight. Something was off. She could feel it in her bones. An uncanny sense that the world had shifted on its axis while she slept. She glanced across the street and noticed her neighbors gathered on their lawns, laughing and chatting as if it were a holiday. Odd, she thought. But what unsettled her most was Mr. Burns. The older man was usually a storm cloud of irritation, no matter the day. He'd spent his life working at the same furniture store his great-great-grandfather had built, forever grumbling about long hours and slow employees. Just yesterday, after another exhausting Saturday shift, his voice had carried across the street, complaining about sluggish junior workers, while his wife, Mrs. Burns, stood by the door, nodding in passive agreement, with an umbrella in hand, as he stomped into the house. But today, he was all smiles, chatting with the Morgans and the Wilsons, laughing as if he didn't have a single care in the world. Just then, Mr. Burns looked over, spotted her, and waved. "Good morning, Maggie." "Good morning, Mr. Burns," Maggie said, her voice tinged with bewilderment. He grinned and called out, "When you get a chance this week, stop by the store. I'll give you a discount on any furniture you want. We just received an investment, and things are really looking up." "Oh, wow, that's wonderful," Maggie replied, trying to mask the confusion on her face. Mr. Burns had never spoken to her before. A grunt or a quick nod was all she ever got. It was always Mrs. Burns who was the social one. Maggie's skin prickled. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she climbed into her car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Something definitely isn't right, she thought. First, the weather seemed odd, and now her neighbor was acting like an entirely different person. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I didn't sleep well, and the mojitos from last night aren't sitting well with me. But no matter how she tried to rationalize it, every instinct screamed that something was undeniably wrong. The drive to the grocery store was oddly surreal. Streets that normally peppered with Sunday morning traffic were unsettlingly quiet. The few cars she passed moved at an unhurried pace, their drivers smiling and waving as if caught up in some unspoken festivity. Pedestrians strolled along the sidewalks with a light-hearted spring in their step, while dogs pranced happily alongside their humans, tails wagging as if the entire world was enveloped in an unfamiliar sense of joy. As she pulled into the parking lot of Greenfield's Market, her unease deepened. The vast stretch of asphalt, usually packed with cars on a Sunday morning, was nearly empty. Only a handful of vehicles sat scattered across the grocery store lot, gleaming under the strangely intense sunlight like polished gems. She cautiously eased into a parking space near the entrance and cut the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, fingers still resting on the steering wheel as she scanned her surroundings, trying to steady her thoughts. "What is going on?" she whispered to herself. Finally, after calming herself, she grabbed her purse and stepped out of the car. The door closed shut behind her, the sound echoing across the parking lot, unnervingly loud against the surrounding stillness. As she approached the store, the automatic doors slid open with an almost too cheerful whoosh, releasing a wave of cool, conditioned air. The familiar fluorescent glow spilled onto the pavement, blinding her momentarily, forcing her to blink rapidly to adjust her eyes. Her gaze landed on the store employees gathered at the entrance, their faces lit with excitement as they chatted and laughed. They held a large banner that read, "Welcome to Greenfield's Market. Happy grand reopening. A new beginning awaits." A grand reopening? This surprised Maggie. She had been at this store just a few days ago, and there had been no sign of renovations, no announcements, no changes, nothing to suggest something like this was happening. She forced a smile at the employees as she walked past, gripping her purse handle tightly. Grabbing a cart, she headed toward the produce section, trying once again to shake off the uneasiness rising in her chest. Maggie quickly grabbed her usual grocery items and a few snacks, hurrying toward the register. Despite the small number of customers, the store hummed with an unusual liveliness. As she made her way through the aisles, everything seemed different. The store fully stocked the shelves with fresh produce, neatly arranged in vibrant displays. Maggie couldn't believe what was happening. This wasn't just a grand reopening. It felt like an entirely new store. Yet, everything looked exactly as it always had. As she fumbled with her wallet, she heard someone call her name. "Maggie, so nice to see you today. How are you?" It was Jen from her yoga class. Maggie barely managed a smile as she turned to face her. "I'm good. Just doing a little shopping," she replied, her voice flat with a forced smile. "Oh, I totally get it." Jen chuckled. "I'm getting ready for the week, too. Can't wait. You won't believe it, but I got a promotion to regional manager last Thursday. Can you believe it? I'm doing what I always wanted." Maggie froze. "Wait, what? I thought you said you hated your job. You even told me you were looking for something else, even if they offered you a promotion." Jen placed a hand on Maggie's shoulder, her face glowing with excitement. "Not anymore. It's my dream job now, Maggie. Isn't it amazing? It feels like a new beginning." Maggie felt a wave of nausea rise in her stomach. Her head spun, and her heart began to race. This didn't feel right. How could everything change so suddenly? The world felt like it was wrapped in some strange, happy haze. How was everyone so cheerful? They continued sharing a little small talk and hugged goodbye just as the cashier finished ringing up Maggie's items. But Maggie's mind was miles away. As if on autopilot, she barely noticed the total as she grabbed her bags and hurried out. Slipping into her car, she leaned back in the seat, feeling disoriented. What was going on? I need caffeine," she muttered, hoping the words would ground her. She headed to the local cafe, desperate for a mocha to shake the eerie feeling that had taken over her, hoping it would wake her up, both literally and figuratively. As Maggie stepped into the cafe, she was taken aback by the atmosphere. It wasn't the usual hectic, impatient crowd, with long lines and customers in a rush. Instead, the cafe was filled with a relaxed energy. People were chatting casually, laughing, and smiling as they sipped their drinks. Then, out of nowhere, one of her co-workers from the hotel, Tim, walked in. His face lit up with a big grin. Their eyes met, and he waved enthusiastically as he made his way toward her, skillfully weaving through customers who were leaving. "Maggie, how are you?" Tim called out, his voice full of excitement. "I'm hanging in there," Maggie replied, still trying to make sense of the strange energy in the air as he joined the line behind her. Tim worked as a bartender at the hotel and was also an aspiring musician, playing local gigs with his band. "Maggie, you won't believe it." Tim's eyes were sparkling as he leaned in closer. "I just signed a huge deal." "What? No way. Congratulations, Tim." Maggie exclaimed, her surprise matching the excitement in his voice. Tim couldn't contain his joy. Yeah, my band got signed to a record label yesterday. It's my dream, and it's happening. Maggie shouted along with him, her mind still on guard. As Maggie picked up her mocha and exchanged goodbyes with Tim, she slowly made her way to the cafe door, still trying to process what she'd just heard. She was genuinely happy for him, but it felt like everyone's life was suddenly falling perfectly into place. Everyone except hers. She stepped outside into the warm air, the cafe's artificial ambiance fading behind her. As her foot hit the pavement and the fresh air brushed her face, a shiver ran through her, a silent reminder that something was wrong. The streets remained unnervingly serene. Everywhere she looked, people seemed to be exactly where they were meant to be. As she drove home, the familiar scene mirrored the one she had seen on her way to the store. She passed a man sitting on a bench, sketching in a notebook, his face radiating quiet contentment. A woman jogged by, her expression one of pure determination, as if every step brought her closer to her passion. Even the baristas at the cafe earlier seemed to move in perfect harmony, clearly in their element. It was as if the world had shifted into some perfect version of itself, where everyone had found their calling. Maggie's stomach tightened as she pulled into her driveway, the weight of the day settling in. The laughter, the smiles, the overwhelming sense of satisfaction. It all felt surreal and too perfect. She quickly collected her groceries and rushed into her apartment, her haven from the unsettling aura of perfection that seemed to envelop everyone around her. How could everyone else be so content, so perfectly aligned with their passions, while she felt like she was just existing? The world outside her window seemed too vibrant, too flawless. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like a carefully crafted facade, one that taunted her with its perfection, mocking her unfulfilled aspirations. After putting away the groceries, she glanced out the window and noticed the sky had darkened. Was it that late already? The day had passed in a blur. With a sigh, she turned her attention to getting her uniform ready for work. She mentally ran through her usual Monday routine. Oh, that's right, she reminded herself. I need to meet with Mr. Carrollson about booking the VIP hall for this week's seminar, since the large banquet hall is undergoing emergency renovations. Are you happy, Maggie? The thought surfaced unexpectedly. Is this really what you want? 2 years from now? 5? 10? The questions lingered, unsettling and impossible to ignore. No, I'm not happy, she whispered at first, then repeated louder. I'm not happy. I'm a 29-year-old front office supervisor, stuck in a monotonous routine," she cried out, her voice breaking as tears spilled down her cheeks. Her voice trembled with frustration as she continued, her emotions pouring out unchecked. "This isn't what I wanted. This isn't the life I dreamed of." She dropped to the floor, fists tightly clenched, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with every breath. "My dreams, my life, everyone around me is thriving, doing what they love, and I'm just stuck." The realization crushed her. The contrast between her stagnant reality and the world's perfect harmony pressing in like an unbearable weight. Seeing her friends last night had left her feeling small, inadequate. They had all progressed into their ideal careers. And when the conversation had focused on her, she attempted to joke and dismiss it with a nonchalant, "Oh, I just changed direction." But the truth was harder to admit, even to herself. Somewhere along the way, ambition had quietly given way to stability. The drive she once had, the fire that pushed her forward, had dimmed, replaced by routine and practicality. And now, as she neared 30, she woke each morning with a dull, persistent ache of regret, haunted by the question, why had I just simply settled for this life? She had long since convinced herself that she was fine, that comfort and security were enough. But were they? Seeing her friends thrive, their eyes alight with passion for the things they loved, had stirred something restless inside her. Do you keep going like this? Waking up every day to the same boring routine, letting time slip through your fingers? Or do you finally take a stand, make a change, and pursue the life and career you truly want? The thought gave her chills. Change was terrifying, but an unfulfilled life was worse. If she didn't decide now, would she still be here years from now, trapped in the same cycle, suffocating under the weight of what-ifs? She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. The choice was hers. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to take the steps necessary to make the change. Maggie felt the weight of the day finally lift, the uneasiness that had clung to her dissipating. As she climbed into bed, a sense of determination settled over her. She was ready to embrace change, to carve out a future she truly wanted. Soon after she drifted to sleep, a loud, thunderous boom jolted her awake. Her eyes snapped open, blinking rapidly as she tried to gather her bearings. Rain pounded against the window, the storm outside mirroring the confusion swirling inside her. Half asleep, she reached for her phone. The screen lit up. 5:34 a.m. Sunday. Squinting, she frowned. Wait, Sunday? Did I read that right? She gasped, sitting up quickly, her heart racing. That couldn't be right. She had just lived through an entire day. She had gone shopping, talked to Jen, seen Tim, struggled with her emotions. How could it possibly be Sunday? Morning again. Scrambling for answers, she lunged for the TV remote and turned it on. The menu flashed across the screen. Sunday, 5:35 a.m. Her pulse roared in her ears. Oh, my goodness. Was it all just a dream? She whispered, her mind racing to make sense of it. A breathless, incredulous laugh escaped her. It was all just a dream. A weird, unsettling dream. Yet, as the initial shock settled, another thought took its place. It had felt so real, so vivid, like she had actually lived it. But more than that, it had forced her to confront the very things she had been avoiding. Her doubts, her fears, and her regrets. Seeing her friends had been the catalyst, but the dream had been the wake-up call. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't merely just a dream. Maybe it was a sign to stop waiting for the world to change for her. There's still time to pursue her dreams and embrace new beginnings. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be exciting. Flight 24/7. It's strange how the most pivotal moments of our lives often begin in the most mundane places. For me, it's the cramped bathroom of Trans-Pacific Flight 1247, 35,000 feet above sea level, when the first tremor rips through the cabin. At this moment, I'm just another passenger with a spike of anxiety from the turbulence we just experienced, making the smart faucet in the bathroom require all of my focus, completely oblivious to the fact that fate has begun its countdown. Why does everything always come down to timing? 5 minutes earlier, and I would have been safely strapped into PODEC, connected to my assigned neural interface, already synced to the emergency protocols. The bathroom mirror catches my reflection as the cabin lights shift from institutional LED 2A to a pulsing amber hue. My heart stutters. I know that color. How people used to fly in these things before EES came around, I'll never understand. They were basically flying in an air-conditioned metal tub with wings. Everyone that flies on Trans-Pacific knows that color. Catastrophic system failure, and the emergency evacuation system has begun. In the old days, this would have meant certain death. But in 2147, commercial aircrafts have evolved from their fragile predecessors. The Airbus Quantum Aeroline doesn't just fly. They adapt, transform, and when necessary, shed their parts like a snake shedding its skin. I lunge for the door. One of the only remaining places on board that doesn't have its own EES protocols. My fingers slipping on the handle, slick from the soapy water that just cleansed my skin of any dirt, germs, and other microorganisms that I collected while on board. My savior might be my demise, I say out loud to myself, spurring myself into hurried movements, wiping my hands down my shirt, hoping to gain more traction on the door handle. Fuck! I scream as the handle and door refuse to move. The status light begins blinking an infuriating red as the message, "Door locked for catastrophic system failure protocol," scrolls across the ticker above the door lock. What usually tells passengers which water closet is in use is now taunting me with my impending fate. The first automated announcement over the intercom sends ice racing through my veins. My lungs are straining against my rib cage as I try to calm my panicked breathing. Attention, passengers. CSFP number 7 has been initiated. Please remain in your seats in your designated pod. Quantum separation will begin in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. The word echoes around in my head like a ball bouncing through a pinball machine. Under normal circumstances, that would be plenty of time for the pods to detach cleanly, their individual gravitational fields engaging as they descended safely to the nearest emergency landing zone. But I'm not in my pod, trapped in my tin can coffin, in the one section of the plane designed to stay with the main hull, the section that goes down with the ship. My mind whirs as I try to remember the schematics video they played at the beginning of our flight, the ones no one ever pays attention to because yada yada, remain in your pods and stay secured to your neural link for the most secure flight, yada yada. Trying not to think of how my sister had mocked me for even watching the video. You're such a germaphobe, I am sure you can make it one flight without washing your hands. It's only an hour-and-a-half flight, Nova, so she had drug my name out just to grate on my nerves. This bathroom is just between PRDRC and PRDD. Only a sealed door and 20 feet separating me from my salvation. The neural link in my travel band is already buzzing frantically, trying to sync my pod. Another tremor, stronger this time. From the tiny crevice of a bathroom window, I catch a glimpse of PRDA silently detaching, its edges alight with blue-green fire as its gravitational field adjusts to the atmosphere around it. Beautiful, yet terrifying. 2 minutes until quantum separation. The second automated announcement sounds over the intercom. 2 minutes. Think. 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 There has to be a way out of here. My fingers trace the door's edge, feeling for there. A manual release panel, disguised as a part of the trim. The kind of backup system engineers include, but never expect anyone to actually use. I dig my nails into the seam and pull. The panel snaps off with a crack that sends me stumbling backwards. Behind the handle is a simple mechanical lever, a startling piece of analog technology for this quantum aeroline. I pull it down, instinctually throwing my body against the door. It bursts open with a pneumatic gasp, nearly sending me sprawling onto the floor. When my feet hit the smart polymer floor, I send up a silent prayer of thanks. The material has already started transforming, preparing for atmospheric re-entry, its texture shifting from a sleek, aesthetic design feature to a practical, high-traction surface designed for an emergency. In the distance, I hear the hydraulic hiss of POD beginning its separation from the mainframe. That's when I see it. My salvation. Pod.3. I press my neural link band against Pod.3's access panel, desperately hoping it will override the security protocols. Each buzz from the band feels like a rock dropping in my stomach. It rejects me once, twice. The authentication failures flashing across the display screen in angry red letters. 1 minute until quantum separation. 1 minute until quantum separation. The automated announcement taunts me over and over again. Panicking, I run my fingers over the screen, looking for anything to try. When in doubt, restart right? The thought flits through my mind. I use my fingers to pry open the panel cover, revealing a simple, glowing red button. Such an archaic solution, hiding in plain sight. A physical reset in a world of AI and neural commands. Slamming my hand against it, I pray to whatever gods might be listening that the oldest trick in the tech world will work one more time. 30 seconds until quantum separation. The announcement washes over me like a bucket of ice water. The walls of Pod.3 begin to vibrate as the clamps begin to initiate their release sequence. The panel flickers from red to amber. The reset seems to have done something, not a full access grant, but a system reboot that might give me enough time. Emergency reset detected. System reinitialization in progress. The words flash across the access panel. I run. The door to Pod.3 slides halfway open, then freezes, caught between evacuation and reboot protocols, forcing my body through the gap, ignoring the sharp parts of the doorframe cutting into my clothes and skin, willing my body to get as small as possible. The system blares warnings through the pod speakers. Unauthorized entry detected. Security breach in Pod.3. Inside, the other passengers stare at me with a mixture of shock and confusion. The woman they had written off as collateral damage amongst the wreckage of this impending crash, defying both protocol and probability. The flight attendant assigned to our Pod makes to move towards me, then hesitates as another announcement cuts through the chaos. 10 seconds until quantum separation. I dive into my seat. The neural interface recognizes my presence as soon as my hand hits the armrest. The familiar tingle of the neural link washes over me, as the pod's systems integrate my biometrics into their separation calculations. For a moment, I think I can feel the algorithms adjusting, compensating for my return. My body sags with relief as my harness straps me into the pod. Did I damn us all with my return? Eaten up with indifference. Eaten up with indifference. I wake to the sound of gnawing, or possibly the sensation of my leg being pulled. It's impossible to know exactly what stirs me, and I'm not even sure if waking is the right term anyway. Am I awake? I am lying on my back, looking up at a single strip light on an otherwise unsurprisingly white ceiling. There seems no possibility that I might move my eyes to see why my leg feels so odd. No more can I move any other part of my body, not even my tongue. This, a feeling that should induce panic, and yet it doesn't. Thinking about it more, there's no particular need to move my tongue, and I don't really know why I've become fixated with the challenge, but I am, and spend what I should imagine is around 1 to 2 minutes trying to poke it out. There is tapping from the corner of the room, and an occasional stifled cough, and I assume, from what I can see and hear, that I am in a small, mostly white office space, occupied by a lady who types on an old-fashioned typewriter. Hello? I imagine, unable as I am to move my lips, mouth, or my diaphragm to produce any sound. The secretary, as I'm now sure she is, carries on with her task, and I hear a faint ting announcing the completion of a line, followed by a thoroughly satisfying ratcheting noise as she starts the next. Tap, tap, tappity tap. The pleasant sensation of being in a room with a hard-working, old-fashioned typist is marred a bit by the chewing, slobbering sound of whatever, or whoever, is gnawing my leg off. Oddly, it doesn't hurt being eaten, if that is what is happening. And I find it puzzling as to why I feel no pain. I make a monumental effort to object, but nothing at all happens. So I decide to stick with the peculiar feeling of relaxed easiness that is the sound of the diligent office assistant. Do you want tea, Derek? The gnawing stops, and my leg settles. Yes, that would be lovely, Diane. Derek sounds very much as if he might still have a large portion of my lower calf in his mouth. It seems I'm being consumed by another human. A human with a very out-of-date name. I hope he will stand up, pop into my eye line, so I can get a look at the fellow and try to communicate my displeasure at what he is presumably doing to me. Nothing happens as I try to move. Nothing at all, so I stop trying and lie still. There really is no other option open to me. The typewriter noises cease, and I hear the sounds of water filling a kettle. Ah, now that rings a bell. Yes, I am here to fix a dripping tap. Is the tap working now, Di? Derek says, confirming my recently revived memory. Seems fine. The plumber fixed the drip, and it turns off properly now. Apparently, I've done the job already. I do remember now. I hear water splash as she confirms her findings. But judging by the tugging sensation, Derek had lost interest and is back at his meal again. I am aggrieved at being referred to as the plumber, not because I'm not, or that I would prefer the use of my actual name, but more that I am being talked about as if I'm not present in the room. Well, Diana, that's not true. And it's actually rather rude to talk about me as if I'm not here. Hello, I'm here. I can't say. I conclude that the secretary is so used to her boss, if he is such, eating tradesmen, that she herself sees them as little more than snacks, like those sandwiches people buy from vans mid-morning. This brings me on to two further thoughts. Firstly, I should be hungry. I've not had my morning meal, and distinctly remember thinking that I would have something in the van once the tap was fixed. Secondly, Diana hasn't offered me a cup of tea. Both remembrances lead on to their own chain of smaller thoughts concerning the parking on yellow lines of my van, and the suspicion that Diana is deliberately ignoring me. The kettle boils to the accompaniment of that lovely crockery chinking sound and spoon in cup noise that make me wholeheartedly wish I too could have a nice cup of tea. It isn't thirst, possibly not even a desire to savor the taste. It is a need to be included as someone rather than something. The something being a meal. There you go, love. Thanks, Di, lovely. I imagine the scene having only their conversation to work with. Di handing a nice hot mug of tea to Derek. He, in turn, has now stopped chewing at my calf and is reaching around, taking his tea and pursing his lips for that first utterly pointless, too hot sip. Can't see it, though. Only the ceiling. Why do we try and taste the first mouthful of freshly made tea when it is quite blatantly and obviously going to be too hot? That is unanswerable and annoying that I have no opportunity to practice the futility myself. Oh, hot, shouts Derek. I feel my leg being pushed, though without sensation, presumably to make space for the cup. I am little more than a dish being nudged aside for the beverage, and I do find that particularly unkind. Being eaten is one thing. At least I am wanted and a part of things when that is happening. Unpleasant as it so horribly is, or at least should be. Why don't I mind? A chair scrapes, and the sound of something being unwrapped, followed by a commentary from the freshly seated Di. Lovely cheese and pickle. Derek doesn't feel the need to comment. I get the impression that the secretary is perfectly happy with the position of denial that I have allocated her regarding my presence. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that she should be eating plowman sandwiches with crisps, crunch, crunch, in the same room as a man devouring another human. So Diana is in denial. Are the secretary's name and denial anagrams? I never was good at that sort of thing, and eventually give up with a vague feeling of a leftover E, but no certainty at all. Why isn't other stuff more prevalent in my head? The question of being unable to move, what it is that has happened to cause my current perilous predicament, and how might it end? I'm not really bothered, though. I just feel sort of relaxed, with a vague uneasiness at being ignored by Di. It dawns on me that I am now discussing events in real time with myself. But that's fair enough, given the circumstances. I do hope I'm not going mad, though. Or have I already done so? And this is all just a part of that. It isn't. It's definitely real. A sudden, vigorous tugging at my outer thigh causes me to rock slightly, and the ceiling to dance in a slightly dizzying fashion. Whilst I can't pinpoint the exact location of the peculiar, numb pulling, I reckon Derek is gnawing hard at a portion of muscle just above my knee. It stops, and I listen as he chews, then feel slightly nauseated when he takes a large sip of tea. I've never liked that, watching people with mouthfuls of food taking a drink. Still, it would be nice to watch anything now, other than the ceiling, which is devoid of entertainment since a large housefly disappeared a while ago. Lovely tea, Di? Is it Yorkshire? Yes, nothing but the best. You know I always look after you, dear. After some time, and a bit more leg pulling, the typing recommences, and I feel very glad of the happy clackety-clack, ringing bell, and satisfying ratchet noise. Time means nothing to me, and I don't feel that it is either dragging or speeding past. It just is. I must have been in a reverie of a sort, because at some point Derek has moved on to my other leg, starting at my foot, and I barely noticed the change. I feel hypnotically relaxed, uncaring, and unconcerned. I wish I could think of the word catatonic. Undoubtedly, but I think there is a better phrase that indicates something more than physical inability. Whatever it is, it shouldn't apply. What is happening to me should be alarming, but somehow I'm not as bothered as I most certainly should be. The lights go out after that, and I enter an entirely unknown passage of time before they flicker on again. However, many hours passed, and I'm guessing around 12. I still can't think of the word. It isn't euphoric, not at all. I hear someone taking their coat off, filling, and then switching on the kettle, and assume it to be Di, fortifying herself for another day at the office. I can't see anything but the ceiling and the fly, which has reappeared and is now as motionless as I am. It's Friday. There has only been one period of darkness since I arrived to sort out the tap on the Thursday morning. I must certainly have a ticket on my van by now, and know that my family are starting to wonder why I'm not home. But Mum won't be bothered. Not yet. He's probably stayed over at someone's after going to the pub. I imagine her saying to my father, who wouldn't have cared less, a bit like me, really. Still, I feel no emotion at all. Not about Mom, or even Nicole, who I am supposed to be taking for a curry tonight. Odd that, not worrying about my loved ones, but not as strange as the very slight but growing resentment that Diana is deliberately ignoring me. That feeling, the one of being irritated at being ignored, is actually the only strong one left. All others apparently crushed by that overwhelming lack of concern that still hasn't got a name. Derek's just arrived and has wasted no time at all tucking into my right upper thigh. He's barely spoken to his secretary and is actually paying me all his attention, even if only to consume my leg. As for Diana, surely she could at least have bent over and looked at me when she came in. Rude, that's what it is. But even this emotion is pretty subdued, and I forgive her once the happy tappity-tap, clackety-clack, dinging starts. It's all very soporific. Good word, that, but not the one I'm searching for. My mind wanders a bit as the day progresses. A day of ham and lettuce sandwiches for Di, and a large portion of my groin for her boss. I remember arriving on Thursday and finding the address of a run-of-the-mill Victorian terrace office with a brass plaque on the door. I'd parked on a double yellow on a back street that was less busy, safe in the knowledge I'd be back pretty quickly if it was just a tap washer job. "Plumber's here, Derek," Diana had said, introducing me by trade rather than name to her boss, who'd barely looked up from his desk, choosing to acknowledge me with little more than a wave. After that, I'm not sure what happened. I'm jolted from my reminiscences by the sudden ringing of a phone. Another relic of the past, I decide, given its distinct ring rather than a modern electronic noise. How nice it hadn't rung at all on Thursday. Perhaps they weren't that busy. "Hello, D&D accountants," says Di cheerily. Ah yes, D&D accountancy. I remember. Di isn't just a secretary at all, and she had referred to Derek as her husband at one point. I'd forgotten that. Derek's a bit busy right now. I'm his partner. Can I help? A bit busy, chomping through some inner part of me. The feeling of tugging is much less pronounced today, and I notice that my sense of hearing is slightly muffled. My vision not quite so acute. The strip light is very slightly blurred. I can still hear well enough, though, and the phone conversation should be providing some light relief to the ongoing tedium of immobility and lack of control. But no, I simply listen because it is happening, not for any other reason. "Yes, we can certainly take on your business, Mr. Court. Let me take down some details." I don't get bored of the half conversation. I just listen. In the end, I stop doing that too, and lie in my state of indifference, as Derek slowly munches through my midriff. Eventually, the light goes off. Another amount of time passes, presumably an entire weekend. On Monday, it's more of the same. Clackety-clack, and tuna salad on brown. The highlight of Monday, not that I measure events or grade them these days, is when Derek pulls violently on my left arm, and I roll slightly to one side. I'm treated to a slightly blurred image of Di eating a chocolate biscuit and reading from a lovely old leather-bound diary before Derek pushes me back to a more prone position. It dawns on me in that briefest of moments that Diana doesn't own a computer. I find that most peculiar, but decide not to dwell on it too long. It's a lot harder to hear now. The phone rings twice, but I can't really hear the conversation. My sense of smell is still okay, and I recognized the metallic odor of what must be me. Alongside myself, I detect Di's perfume and the furniture wax polish that has been used on the beautiful antique oak and leather topped desk I recall being in the center of the office. I'm on that desk now, or at least some of me is. On Tuesday, there's a delivery. I can't really hear much now, and my vision is so poor that there is either darkness or light. Little else. So I don't know who has rung the barely audible buzzer, or what it is that Di had gone to the front door to collect. Tappity-tap. But only just. I miss the ratchet sound and barely hear the ding. A week has passed, more or less. I realize that there is little more of me left than a head, and possibly a small bit of neck. Derek, it seems, is quite greedy. The very last thing I am aware of is the light flickering. On, off, on, off. It doesn't usually do that, having to date been a fairly decisive piece of electronics. A very muffled voice. Di, I think, lights on the blink. We'd better call an electrician. Yes, I hear Derek mumble through a mouthful of something. I'm about ready. Clackety-clack, and one last ding. Apathy. That's the word I was looking for. I wake to the sound of gnawing. Or is it the sensation of someone or something pulling at me? In the confusing half-second that exists in that time between consciousness and otherwise, it is very difficult to know what's real and what isn't. Lost Hope. January 20th, 2025. Entry 1. It all happened so fast. All I could grab was my journal and a few pens. Alarms began blaring, and Dad rushed me. Mom and David down into a bunker? I don't know when we got a bunker or why, but it was deep under our house. It's spooky down here. One light source in the center of the room. Only 2 mattresses. And the rest of the space is full of Rougarous and jugs of water. I'm not sure how long we're going to be down here, so I figured journaling would be fun. Though, no one's answering my questions. Dad looks more serious than usual. He's been checking his pocket watch since we got here. Mom hasn't stopped pacing around, And David, the deadbeat, sat right on a mattress when we got down here. I don't want to be the only kid down here, so hopefully it only lasts a few days. January 23rd, 2025. Entry 2. The alarms and sirens from above finally stopped today. They made it hard to sleep, but it wasn't like it was easy to sleep in the first place. The beds were made for a kid half my size, and me and Mom had to share, so it was cramped. I still don't know why we are down here, but it's looking like it's going to be a little longer than a few days. It smells down here. The hole we potty in is deep, but the smell still sneaks up and fills the room with stench. And I'm not a fan of the food. I preferred the terrible food we got from the middle school. Then these cans. I wonder what my friends are doing. I miss them. January 28th, 2025. Entry 3. I hear people above. They sound sick and like they need help. Bangs and booms, groaning and wheezing. These sounds echoing through the bunker. But Dad says we can't help them. But if they're outside, why are we trapped in here? Also, David keeps looking at me funny. I don't like it. It ruins our card games. February 1st, 2025. Entry 4. I would have been such a great weather girl. I was always jealous of the ladies on TV. They were so pretty. But I can always guess the weather in the bunker. A high chance of inhaling bodily fumes, followed by boredom for the entire day. Stay safe, folks. It looks like this has no mention of ending anytime soon. No time soon. February 3rd, 2025. Entry 5. I got curious. This bunker didn't just appear. Dad must have built it. And that means he knew something. Knew this was coming. Why didn't he warn us? He has a small leather journal. Keeps it tucked inside his blazer pocket. I know I shouldn't, but I need to see what's inside. February 7th, 2025. Entry 6. I started bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I just kept crying and crying. My mom was trying to comfort and explain what was happening, but I thought I was dying. It didn't help that David kept looking at the stain on my pants. I was so embarrassed. I hate him. I hate having to be around him, and he won't stop looking at me. I wish I could just vanish. February 8th, 2025. Entry 7. I stayed up while everyone was sleeping. Dad doesn't sleep with his blazer on, so I was able to grab the journal and look through it. None of it made sense, though. There were just symbols scribbled all through the journal, but I've seen him writing in it. Why draw these symbols? What does it mean? I also think David caught me snooping, because when I walked over to his and Dad's bed, he was shifting around. If he tells I don't know what Dad will do. February 10th, 2025. Entry 8. David never said anything about the journal, so I think I'm in the clear. I'm becoming direly bored. David sits on his bed all day Mom keeps replaying solitaire, and Dad is just checking his watch and journaling. No conversation is killing me. There's nothing new, no fresh air, and I never know if it's nighttime or not. If this is survival, is it even worth it? February 10th, 2025. Entry 9. I climbed to the top of the ladder to see if I could hear anything. I almost fell down because the ladder was old and the bars shifted. That fall could have been really bad. Most of the noises from above had stopped, and so it's just been silence. But when I pressed my ear to the hatch, I could feel vibrations, almost like a buzzing, like a wasp. There's still a world out there, I think. February 12th, 2025. Entry 9. I asked Dad about the buzzing, since now it's loud enough to be slightly heard from in the bunker. He, of course, didn't answer me, but he looked concerned by me asking. I couldn't take it. He had just stared at the hatch and then gave me his pocket watch. February. So much has happened. I lost my pens, so I couldn't write anything. It all feels so frozen. Nothing is moving anymore. Nothing's the same. My mind has run out of thoughts. The noises above are muffled. The only thing I feel is my heart bumping in my chest. Dad stopped checking his watch. He no longer writes anymore. I miss showering. My body is so dirty, even though I scrub so much. No matter how hard I try, the dirt won't come off. I catch my dad looking at the ceiling every day now. He's probably thinking what we both have been thinking this entire time. Is it safe to go up yet? He always looks scared whenever the thought crosses his mind. I can see it. His dread of what's to come. Why won't he tell me? Is it so terrible? Maybe I should find out for myself. It would be better than being in this casket. I'm tired of soup. I'm so tired. I want him to hug me. I want a hug so bad. It's been so long since I've been hugged. But I can't. I can't accept his comfort. It's hurting him to know he can't help me. A hug from Mom would've. She gave the best hugs. The buzzings never stopped before. So many continuous days with that buzzing in my ear. It's finally gone. Something changed. I have to take this chance. Dad would try to stop me if he knew. I have to do it now while he's asleep. I know you're reading this now, Dad. I love you. I wasn't strong enough. Forgive me. High hopes in the rain. Sitting in a chair in the living room. Dave wonders, I know that I have to do something drastic, or nothing will change in our relationship. But what can that be? I was foolish and selfish. I am aware of that now. How do I undo it? He walks to the window and looks out, as if the act would give him an answer. As he scans the surroundings, he sees that it is raining. It is what his grandfather would have called a doozy of a storm. Then he gets an idea. He decides to follow it through though it might just be foolish to the max. But he feels that it has to be tried. It is desperation time. He goes into the bedroom and puts on what is well known to friends and family to be his favorite sweater, blue with a big maple leaf on the front. Then he goes outside, getting soaked in mere seconds. He thinks once more about the foolish thing that he did slightly more than a week ago. At the very least, this will be yet another punishment, one that he is imposing on himself, one that he feels he deserves. But his hope is that it will change the failing state of his marriage, the event that harmed his marriage. It was a Saturday night, and as usual for this time of year, he was watching a hockey game in which his beloved Toronto Maple Leafs were playing. It was the third period, and the game was tied 3-3. The Leafs had been behind, but had made a comeback to tie the game. Their opposition, the New York Rangers, had just received a tripping penalty. The phone rang, and he wondered whether or not to answer it. But he could still watch the game while listening on his phone. It was his wife, Eva. She had been out to watch a movie with her best friends. They lived on the other side of town, so they were taking a bus to go back home. For her, there was an hour-long walk. There was no bus that would take her home. She did not feel like walking, as it had been a long day for her. And there were some thick clouds approaching where she was standing. She asked Dave to pick her up at the theater so that she would not have to walk home. His reply was definitely not what she wanted to hear. He told her that he was watching the Leaf game, and it was tied in the third period, with the Rangers just getting a penalty. He could not possibly abandon the game at this stage. She was stunned by his response and ended the call on the phone. She did so with anger and energy, banging her phone on her upper leg. Both of them knew that there was no bus that went near to their home. When she went to call a taxi cab, she discovered that her phone was no longer working. She would have to walk. And as she did, the expected rainfall began. Very heavy it was. By the time she reached home, she was completely drenched and very, very angry with her husband. Her first words to him when she finally arrived at their home was, "I think that you prefer your beloved Leafs to me. I hope that they lost." He was going to say that they won 4-3, something that he had jumped up and cheered about at the time, but was astute enough not to do so. When he looked at her drenched person and angry face, he knew that he was in deep trouble. The next day, which was Sunday, they barely spoke to each other. And when dinner time rolled around, and he asked her whether they might go out to have dinner in a local place that they both liked, her only reply was, "I guess there was no Leafs game tonight, or you would not have asked me. I'm making my own dinner tonight, and you can make your own damn dinner." Over the next few days, there was little said between them, other than the bare necessities, barked out in very short sentences. This is what had led him to the desperate gesture of going out in the rain while wearing his maple leaf sweater. He knew that she would soon to be in the living room as her favorite television show was on. The television had its back to the window through which the front yard could be seen. She came into the room and turned on the television. Dave felt that she would eventually be seeing him and his soaking wet treasure. A few minutes passed by, and she did not appear to see him, so he walked towards the window until he was only a step away. He wanted to knock on the window, but decided against it. After about 10 minutes, she stood up. He reckoned that there was a commercial on, and that she was going to the kitchen to get something to eat or drink. He had heated up a frozen pizza for his own supper, and had eaten it alone, as he had done every night since the Saturday of her drenching. When she returned to the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, she suddenly saw him, wet sweater and all. She put the glass down and walked towards the window. Knowing him well after 5 years of marriage, she recognized one of his symbolic gestures. The fact that he had worn his leaf sweater while out in the rain had meaning that she clearly understood. She went quickly to the front door, opened it, and in a friendlier manner than she had used in speaking to him in days, she shouted out to him, "Come in right now, you moron," an affectionate term shared between them. When he came inside, she said to him, "I would hug you, you moron, but I don't want to get wet. Take the sweater off so I can put it in the dryer, and put something dry on." He stripped off the soaking garment and handed it to her. She grabbed it and took it downstairs to the dryer. He stood there, half naked, with a big smile on his face. When she returned to the living room, she returned his smile with a smile of her own. He then said, "I was selfish on Saturday. I am so sorry about that. You are way more important to me than a hockey team could ever be. You are in first place. They are a distant second." This was followed by a mutually engaging hug. The Odyssey. As the sea tosses the Odyssey between its mountainous waves like a ping-pong ball, it's all I can do to keep one hand on the rudder. She's in bad shape, and I'm not much better. Ugly, purple-blue bruises stain my arms and sides from the amount of times I've been thrown against the edge of the boat, with wind stinging me with its spiteful embrace, and rain blurring my vision like tears. I can hardly see a foot in front of me. Although it wouldn't be much if I could, the whole ocean from the waves ahead, the Odyssey to the horizon, is frothed up in a frenzy of movement, and everything looks the same. Another wave crashes against the side of the boat, and she tips sideways. My legs slip out from under me. I'm hanging, arms stretched high over my head as I hold on to the rudder. The Odyssey is almost still, stuck in the uncertain midpoint between falling right way up or upside down. I clench my eyes shut and breathe in deeply. My stomach clenches as I try to hold in the air I'll need when the boat gets overturned. The vicious wind assaulting my ears stops me from hearing the wave that turns us over. My head hits the deck. I lose my grip on the rudder. My senses flood with water. I try to keep a clear head without opening my eyes. Hopefully, the hundreds of storms I've been in before have adequately prepared me for this. It's what I think every time, but I never know until the storm has passed and I'm still alive. Under the surface, the current's still the same. It tosses me from one wave to another. I grope around for a handhold. I must know this deck enough to find one. But within the rage of the storm, I can't place my thoughts steadily enough to get a clear picture of the deck above water. And I plan to spend as little time as possible studying it from below. After what was probably minutes rather than hours, but was, in either case, too long, I manage to grip something. It's a kind of pole, thick, so that I have to use both hands to hold on. My lungs raise a tentative whine, a plea for my mouth to open. Not yet, I tell them. Previous storms have taught me I'll have to wait until the fury is over before I upturn my boat. In the meantime, I'll have to find my way onto the bottom of the vessel to catch a breath and try not to slip off until the storm has passed. I claw my way to the edge. My eyes are stinging from the exposure to salt water and from how tightly I'm clamping them together. There's a flame alight in my lungs, and I fight the urge to open my mouth for just 1 second to put the fire out. I grab the end of the keel and try to push myself up, but it's too wet and slippery to get a firm hold. The waves slap me against the boat. My mouth opens involuntarily to groan in pain, and I clamp it shut. Too early or too late. Water has managed to creep inside my mouth, but air hasn't, clinging desperately to the edge of the keel. I wrap my legs around the rope that's always coiled on the end of the deck, not daring to open my eyes. I clench my knees together and try to pull the rope up to me. It slips. I only just catch it with my feet. Suppressing a yelp, I force myself to remain calm. Panicking could make me drown. Trying a different tactic, I use my boots to spread the rope out. I have to let go of the keel with one hand so I can hold it. I hesitate, then shake the reluctance out of my head. Indecision could make me drown too. My lungs burn as if they're packed with ice. My left hand slips, and I take the opportunity to grasp the rope. Pulling it upwards, I grab the keel again, this time holding the rope between 2 fingers. A lull in the waves lets me take a shaky breath. Just enough to keep me going. I try again with my right hand. Letting go of the keel, I grip the rope between 2 fingers. I fiddle with it until I've got a good grip. Then pull my hand up to grasp the keel again. This is always the hardest part. So far, I've always managed it. But there's a first time for everything. If this doesn't work, I'm dead. I can't help the thought. I shove it away, recalling the face of my wife and daughter. I need to live, at least for them. Gathering my courage, I pull my hands up, bringing the rope with me. It goes taut, and I stop myself, breathing a sigh of relief. It would only waste breath. Tugging the rope upwards, I haul myself onto the bottom of the Odyssey and allow myself a breath. My lungs are still burning, but it's bearable for now. Only one more job. Taking a deep breath, I lay on my front and force my head underwater. I don't waste time tying a double anchor bend around the closest rail of my boat. Finishing it, I drag my head out of the water and quickly tie the other end of rope around my waist in a bowline knot. I pull myself back out of the water and treat myself to a well-earned breath. A few drops of salt water splash past my open lips, but at least I'm not drowning anymore, lying uncomfortably on my front. I stretch my arms and legs out to improve balance. I can feel my face turning red from being pressed against the keel, so I turn it sideways. One eye is too squashed to open. The other is squinted for maximum balance of sight and clarity, given the waves that continue to assault me until the storm passes. I'm stuck like this. Afterwards, I can safely overturn the Odyssey. I can only hope it won't happen before I've untied myself. But for now, all I can do is wait. Stormy night. Eli Carter stood in the middle of Elm Street, rain pouring down like God's own wrath, drenching him to the bone. The water hit the pavement so hard it bounced. A million tiny suicides leaping from the sky, only to splatter and die. The street lights flickered, their weak yellow halos barely piercing the downpour. His shoes squelched with each step, and his breath came in tight little gasps. He didn't know how long he'd been standing there. Minutes? Hours? A lifetime? He had no memory of how he got here. A second ago, or maybe an eternity. He had been in bed, tangled in sheets damp with sweat, the weight of a dream pressing down on him like a lead blanket, a dream of movement, of running. Endless hallways stretched before him, impossibly long, bending at angles that didn't make sense. The walls, lined with doors, slammed shut behind him, one by one, not by his doing, but by something unseen, something chasing, something that wanted him. Each door he passed felt like a choice he had already failed to make. Each slammed door, a lost opportunity. His breath had come in gasps. His legs ached from running. But the hallways never ended. Just turn after turn, door after door, the floor shifting beneath his feet like the belly of a great beast. There were no windows, no light, except the sickly glow of something overhead that wasn't quite a bulb, wasn't quite fire. And in the air, thick as humidity in August, was the hum of something enormous. Some deep, resonant sound felt more in his ribs than in his ears. And then, this. The dream had ruptured, torn apart like thin fabric. And he had been here, the rain, the street. No transition, no waking up. Just one reality swapped for another, seamlessly, cruelly. His mind struggled, clawing for logic where there was none. The downpour drummed against his skull, cold rivulets snaking down the back of his neck, washing away the last frayed edges of the dream. But had it even been a dream? Because the certainty struck him now, deep and final. A stone dropped into the well of his gut. Something was very, very wrong. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Across the street, just beyond the yawning black mouth of an alley, stood a man. He was tall and thin, dressed in a suit too old-fashioned to be modern, but too crisp to be antique. His face was long, almost horse-like, but his eyes were holes, not black pits, not deep shadows, holes, like someone had taken an ice cream scoop to his face and dug them clean out. Eli took a step back. The man took a step forward. A chuckle floated through the rain, thin and reedy, like laughter being played backward on an old cassette tape. Eli turned and ran. The city around him twisted as he moved, as if reality itself were coming undone, unraveling thread by thread. The buildings groaned, their bones creaking, their very foundations shifting beneath his frantic steps. They leaned in, warping like softened candle wax left too close to a flame, their brick faces drooping, sagging, watching. Windows blinked, slow, reptilian, sluggishly adjusting their focus. Black pupils contracting and expanding, as if deciding whether to acknowledge him or swallow him whole. The sidewalks rippled beneath him, no longer solid, but something uncertain, something alive. Each step sent out concentric rings through the puddles, distorting his reflection. His face melting, elongating, breaking apart into something unrecognizable. The street lamps flickered, their light stretching and warping, casting shadows where there should be none. Shadows that flickered and darted, mimicking his movements with a half-second delay, as if considering whether they should obey him or something else entirely. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. His feet pounded against the street, their rhythm desperate, breath hitching in his throat, like a song caught on a broken record. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, but none of it mattered, because behind him, gaining, closing the distance with something worse than footsteps, was him. No sound, no breathing, just presence, heavy, dense, a gravity that pressed against the nape of Eli's neck, thick as storm clouds rolling in, the air charged with something unspeakable. His skin prickled, his instincts screamed, "Don't look back, don't look back." But something deep inside him, something ancient and terrified, already knew if he did, if he turned to see what followed, it would be the last thing he ever saw. He rounded a corner and slammed into something solid. A wall? No. A person. A woman. She was small, bird-like, with a sharp face and sharper eyes. Her raincoat was red, vivid, almost glowing against the gray world around them. She grabbed Eli by the shoulders, her fingers biting into his flesh like talons. "You need to wake up," she hissed. "I am awake." She shook her head. Not yet. A roar split the air behind him. Not a human sound. Not even an animal sound. A sound made of nightmare and hunger, of places that existed only in the deepest recesses of the brain. The places humans had long since forgotten how to fear. Eli turned. The man was closer now, his mouth stretching into an impossible grin, jagged teeth protruding like broken piano keys. The woman yanked Eli to the side, dragging him toward the nearest door. It wasn't there a second ago, but it was there now. A rusted metal thing, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, freestanding, no walls to frame it. She shoved it open and pulled him through. Everything flipped. Inside out. Upside down. Eli hit the ground hard, the breath leaving his lungs in a rush. He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom. The rain was gone. The city was gone. The woman gone. He was lying in his own bed, tangled in sweat-drenched sheets, the room bathed in the cold glow of his alarm clock. 3:47 a.m. A dream. Just a dream. He sat up, rubbing his face. His hands were shaking, fingers twitching like dying spiders. His throat was dry, a desert of cotton and dust. He needed water, something real, something solid to anchor himself. The lingering weight of the dream, or whatever it had been, clung to him like a second skin, sticky suffocating. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and froze. His feet were wet, not damp, not dewy with sweat. Wet, like he had waded through a flooded street, like he had stepped barefoot into the mouth of a storm. His pajama pants clung to his calves, the fabric sodden and heavy, waterlogged with something that smelled faintly of earth and rot. The cold bled into his bones. Then he saw it, a tiny river of water, glistening in the dim glow of his bedside clock, winding its way across the floor like a snake slithering home. It led to the bedroom door. No, not just to the door. Through it. And there, stark against the pale wood, were muddy footprints. His footprints, Eli's breath hitched. His ribs felt too tight, his heart slamming against them like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched the sheets, sopping wet. The scent of rain clung to them, sharp and electric, the metallic tang of a storm that had no place inside his room. A storm that should not have followed him here. The air shifted behind him. The closet door creaked. The sound slow and deliberate, like a sigh from something old and waiting. The shadows inside it gaped, thick and hungry, and then, oh God, then from the darkness came a chuckle, thin, reedy, a sound that knew him, storm of duality. Not again, not so soon. Margaret's whisper carried over the silence of the house. With a fierce grip, she bit her remaining fingernail, tearing a piece off and causing the skin to bleed. Margaret stood at the window as the sky brooded, thick with the weight of an impending storm. Dark clouds churned in slow agony, twisting and folding over themselves as if writhing in torment. This storm, she knew, would continue for days. Long, agonizing days. A sharp gust of wind rattled the glass, and she flinched. The leaves outside skittered like restless spirits, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The first patter of rain kissed the roof, soft, almost deceivingly gentle. She, however, saw through the deception. Soon, the downpour would come, the sky would open, and the world would drown in its sorrow. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. It was happening again. The slow, creeping descent. The shift within herself that she feared most. Margaret felt strangely linked to the storm. A tether that bound her to its fury, its anguish. As the clouds thickened and the thunder rumbled low in the distance, something inside her twisted. The familiar chasm in her mind yawned open, and she felt herself slipping into it. Her childhood marked her first awareness of this connection. A violent thunderstorm had raged outside, and she had found herself gripped with a restless, frantic energy. It was as though the storm had crawled inside her and filled her veins with its electric charge. Her mother had found her hours later, curled in a corner, whispering to herself. "It's not me," she had murmured over and over. "It's not me." Adulthood brought no change to that feeling. The storm, the darkness, the shifting inside her. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's how it felt. Two selves coexisting in fragile balance until the storm tipped the scale. A peal of thunder cracked across the sky, and she clenched her hands into fists. The rain was coming harder now, sheets of it hammering against the house with merciless force. The wind howled, shaking the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky as she moved from the window. The walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows distorting her sense of reality. She reached for the kettle with unsteady hands, trying to focus on something tangible, something real. But her fingers fumbled, and the kettle clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. Margaret gawped, stumbling back and slamming into the counter. The impact sent a jolt through her body, but it was nothing compared to the dread twisting inside her. The storm's grip extended beyond the world outside. It clawed at her very mind, unraveling her sanity, thread by thread. She could feel herself fracturing, her thoughts splintering under the immense pressure, as if something dark and insidious lurked just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. The whispering started then, not from outside, not from the wind, but from within her own head. Just surrender. It will be easier. She squeezed her eyes shut, rocking her head. No, why fight it? You know this is who you are. She pressed her hands to her temples. Her breathing was increasing, like the thunder and lightning. Her ears were buzzing, overpowering the storm itself. Margaret sensed her body was detaching from itself, like her reality was crumbling to the floor. It was the storm inside her, the darkness waiting to consume her. Another crack of thunder split the sky, and a bolt of lightning illuminated the house in a stark, white flash. Margaret reconnected with her body again and felt the surge through her veins, like she poked a fork in a light socket. She glimpsed at herself in the kettle's reflection. Her dilated eyes, the size of marbles, and her pale, almost unrecognizable face stared back at her. Then she realized the storm had taken her. She staggered backward, her hands clutching at the edge of the counter. She needed to hold on, to ground herself. She didn't want to become that person. Darkness prompted unthinkable actions. It whispered to her, feeding her fears, twisting her thoughts until right and wrong blurred together. It promised relief, power, an escape from the suffocating weight of reality. But she knew the cost. She had seen it before, felt it claw at her mind, urging her to surrender. Her fingers gripped the counter tighter, nails biting into the surface. She had to resist. She fought despite the overwhelming urge to give up. Letting go felt incredibly tempting. To release pent-up emotion, to embody the storm's will. She could feel the power coiling in her chest, raw and untamed. Another roar of thunder, another crash of rain. The wind shrieked, rattling the windows as she thought they might shatter. Margaret let out a strangled sob. "Please, stop." But storms don't listen. Their anger is unrestrained, and they destroy. Tears burned fiery trails down her cheeks. She staggered forward, pressing her forehead to the cool glass of the window. The rain distorted the world outside, turning everything into an indistinct blur. Just like her mind, she had to hold on. She had to be strong and fight. With a trembling breath, she forced herself to move, to step away from the window. She grabbed the kettle from the floor and set it back on the stove, the simple motion anchoring her. She filled it with water, her fingers still shaking, but moving with purpose. The dizziness was overpowering her, while vibrations pulsate at her temples, and brief electrical shakes interrupted her thought process. She would endure the storm, both outside and within. But what awaited on the other side? Would she emerge unscathed, or would the tempest leave its mark, reshaping her in ways she could never undo? Having put the kettle back on the counter, Margaret closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She made her way to the special place, the soundproof area, with images of forests, waterfalls, and seascape. She made sure it was stocked with water, nuts, and protein bars. This served as her refuge, untouched by inner or outer turmoil. Here, seemingly serene, she escaped chaos. Briefly rediscovering herself, Margaret cast a final glance at the furious storm, its howls clawing at the windows like a desperate specter. As she forced the door shut, the latch clicked into place, a thin barrier between her and the chaos beyond. Yet, just before the silence settled, the storm's final utterance slithered through the cracks, a venomous whisper threading into her mind. "You can never escape me. I'll always be with you." A tremor ran down her spine, but she clenched her fists, grounding herself. The storm could rage, it could scream, but she refused to let it claim her. Not tonight, and for tonight, that was enough. The edge of a moment. With squealing tires, the bus slowly came to a stop, its doors groaning open. Abby's first step after the long journey felt weak. Her shoes crunched in the snow as she looked around, and slung her bag over her shoulder, her breath curling in the crisp December air. The familiar sight of her childhood town, a quiet corner of North Carolina, had hardly changed in the years she'd been away. Christmas lights flickered in the windows of the small brick houses, and a gentle dusting of snow clung to the evergreens lining the main street. Home, she thought, although it hadn't been a home to her for years, and it certainly lost that feeling long ago. She was simply here to spend the holidays with her mother, celebrate her birthday, and finally take a deep breath after years of grueling studies. But as she adjusted the strap of her duffel bag, she collided with someone. Hard. The road was slick with fresh snow, and Abby's boots failed to find purchase. She slipped, her arms flailing as gravity yanked her down. She hit the ground with a thud, snow seeping into her coat. "Ow!" she muttered, wincing. Before she could move, a pair of strong hands reached out to help her up. "You okay?" The voice was warm, concerned. Abby looked up. Irritation flickered through her until her brain caught up to what just happened. She froze. The man before her was impossibly familiar. His sharp blue eyes, the dimple in his cheek as he frowned. It was as if she were staring at one of the few old photographs she kept of her father. Luke, a man she never knew. Her father who left her and her mom so soon after Abby was born. It couldn't be. This man looked no older than 30. Her father, if he were alive, would be nearing 60. "Are you okay?" the man asked again, still with a firm grip on her shoulders, as if she might collapse again if he let go. Abby struggled to find words. I think so. Let me get you a coffee. That'll help." Unable to object, and with her thoughts spinning, she found herself following him into a small coffee shop she didn't recognize. Was this new? Had she just never noticed it before? The place had an old-fashioned charm, with a jukebox humming softly in the corner, and a menu written in looping cursive script. "Hi, Luke. What can I get you today?" The girl behind the counter smiled warmly. He ordered 2 cups of steaming black coffee, while Abby sat down at a small table by the big window. She looked outside at the snow-dusted street, the glowing Christmas decorations, the town she knew so well. Yet something felt different, familiar, but not quite right. "I'm Luke, by the way," the man introduced himself as he set the cups down. Yes, she heard that. But she wasn't processing it. Abby's stomach twisted. "I'm Abby." "That's a pretty name. Are you from here, Abby? Or just visiting?" The small talk momentarily distracted her from the gnawing sense of unease. A little bit of both, I guess. I was born here, but moved away when I went to college. He nodded, sipping his coffee. Abby studied his face. The only pictures she had of her dad were old and grainy. Not much to go on. But this man felt so eerily familiar. Maybe a long-lost brother? A cousin? Someone with an uncanny resemblance to her father? Maybe this was the reason her dad disappeared so suddenly after she was born. Maybe he was the reason. She cleared her throat, trying to form a coherent sentence. So, what about you? Are you from around here? Yeah, born and raised. And what do you do? Abby needed to know more. Nothing much to tell? I work odd jobs here and there, but I'm trying to find something more permanent. Maybe move to a bigger place next year. They each took another sip of coffee. Abby glanced around again. She didn't recognize the people in the cafe. The decor seemed off, more old-fashioned. Then something else struck her. I don't recognize this place, she muttered, almost to herself. Luke heard her. Really? It's been here forever. Maybe I just never paid much attention, she said, forcing a small smile. You should. It's a great place. He laughed suddenly and pointed toward the jukebox in the back. That's where my wife and I shared our first kiss. We're expecting a baby girl any day now. Abby blinked. Oh, she couldn't help but smile at the small anecdote. He even blushed slightly. Sorry, I don't know why I just said that. His voice lowered. Now it was his turn to study her. There was something about her. The same blue eyes as his. But her hair, light and wavy, falling in big waves around her shoulders. You remind me of her, he said, realizing it. Abby's fingers tightened around her cup. Oh, my wife, he said, his voice softer now. Her hair, the way you move your face. You look like her. Abby swallowed hard, but remained silent. Luke chuckled awkwardly, shaking his head as if trying to get rid of the thought. It's strange, though. You feel familiar? Have we met before? Abby forced a small smile. What do you say to that? With this feeling in her gut, she couldn't explain. No, I don't think so. He nodded slowly, like trying to fit together pieces of a puzzle that wouldn't align. Weird. Weird didn't even begin to cover it. Maybe his wife was the missing piece in all of this. What's her name? Your wife? Abby asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Part of her already knew, but needed him to confirm it. Julie. Luke leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on the table, as though he could read the answer in her face. You know her. Are you related? Abby's heartbeat thundered in her ears. This couldn't be a coincidence. His name was Luke. His wife's name was Julie. They were expecting a baby girl. Cold realization crept over her like a shadow. Could this be the man who vanished when she was a baby? Could this actually be her father? She opened her mouth, her breath quick and shallow. No, I don't think so. The cafe's warmth faded. The clinking of cups the murmur of voices, all drowned out by the rush of blood in her ears. Luke wasn't moving. He stared at her, eyes searching, waiting, and then, like a dam breaking, she couldn't hold it in anymore. "I think she's my mom." Abby's voice trembled. "I think you're my dad. You disappeared almost 25 years ago. Right after I was born." Luke didn't react at first. The weight of her words sank into the space between them, heavy and unmovable. Seconds passed like hours. She wanted to run, but stayed glued to her seat opposite of him. Then he finally spoke. "That's not possible. I'm right here. I'm not missing. I come to this place all the time." He shook his head, as if refusing to let the realization settle. "Besides, I would have been a kid, 6 years old back then." "Back then?" The words caught in Abby's throat. Back when? Her fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. She inhaled sharply, steadying herself before asking the question she suddenly dreaded. "What year is it?" Luke's face was a storm of emotions. Confusion, disbelief, something close to fear. 1999. Abby's breath left her in a silent gasp. The world around her warped, twisted. The answer she had been looking for had been right in front of her all along. She had stepped back in time. Repercussion. I remember the car crash that took my grandmother's life, like it was yesterday. And when I say I remember, I mean vividly, because I was in the passenger seat. We hit an oncoming vehicle, trying to overtake on a blind bend. My grandmother seemed to register the car and sighed at the inevitable. Everything happened in slow motion. The sound of metal crushing, air whooshing past where it shouldn't. The man who was trying to overtake hit the driver's side of my car and ended up hitting a tree and burning to death after impact. It felt like we were spinning for ages. I had looked over at my grandmother, hunched over, a look of pure terror mirroring my own. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was told the woman in the third car avoided the crash completely and pulled up onto the grassy bank on the other side of the road from where the car was burning to call the police. My mother was a wreck for weeks after, ranting at me from the minute I opened my eyes in the hospital bed. "How could you let her drive, Anne? It was your car, your responsibility." The doctor, with his blue scrubs and shaved head, said it was a miracle. I only had a fractured wrist and concussion, considering my grandmother had split her head open, lost her arm with the car door, and had a heart attack as she bled out. I knew my mother's rage was mostly because I was unconscious for the last few moments of her mother's life, where she died alone and in pain. My father tried to reassure me that it wasn't my fault, but I knew it was. I knew she would still be here if I had driven. The morning of the crash, she had walked the mile or so. It was from her house to ours, hoping we could go shopping together, as she did almost every Saturday since I got my license. Because I idolized her, when she asked to drive us, I would always let her, every time. I wasn't allowed to visit her, lying in rest in the chapel. It will upset the aunts and uncles too much, was the excuse my mother used. She was the heart and soul of the family, you understand. But I didn't. She was my grandmother. She was part of me too. They should have let me say goodbye. A week after the funeral, the dreams started. She always turned up at the front door, asking if I wanted to go shopping with her, much like she did the morning of the crash. Those first few weeks, I always woke up not long after I saw her standing there, the terror jolting me out of the dream. I rarely dreamt before the crash. Sleep then had been beautiful blackness. I prayed for a dreamless sleep to return, growing weary of the overactive repetition of my sleeping mind. As time went on and winter came around, the dreams uncontrollably got longer. I would agree to drive her, and as I walked out the front door in my dream, she would start having a heart attack, falling to the ground in a pile of blood that rose from the grassy lawn. When I told my father about this, fearful of letting my mother know, he put it down to the medication I was on. He took me back to the doctors, who prescribed me something else to try. The dreams didn't stop, but they didn't get worse either. I tried to return to normal, going to volleyball practice and on date nights with my boyfriend, Phil. It worked for a little while, nearly 2 months after the crash. I opened my curtains one morning and looked down at the lawn, as I had done every morning of my life, to see someone standing at the end of the drive, about 100 yards away. I didn't pay much attention to them the first day, or second. On the third day, the person moved a bit closer to the house, as if demanding to be seen. My grandmother looked up at me with a blank expression. I shut the curtains, trying to ignore the apparition. I was convinced death was coming to get me, so I stopped sleeping, afraid I wouldn't wake up. The lack of sleep meant grandmother was around more, stalking me from a closer proximity, standing behind me in the mirror as I washed my face in the morning, sitting in the back of the car when my mother took me to school, walking past me in the hallways at school. I was grateful she remained silent, and her right arm was still intact. She had given me a cross for my 10th birthday, and I dug it out of my closet and started wearing it constantly, hoping it would ward off her spirit, or at least trick my brain into warding her off. But the cross did nothing. I Googled ways to relax. It told me to take a bath and eat healthier food. I was barely eating, so I took a bath. Everything was okay, until the bath water turned bright red like fresh blood, and I passed out from a mixture of fear and lack of food. My mother found me hours later, prune-like and shivering in the water. "Can't you see it?" I said through chattering teeth. She looked over my body as if checking for injury. "See what?" What did you do? I spoke slowly, my voice raspy. The bath is filled with blood. My mother flinched, as though I had slapped her, then pulled the plug out and let the bath drain. Then she wrapped me in 3 towels and bundled me downstairs to sit in front of the fire, where I watched my grandmother's face dance behind the flames. One Saturday, at the height of my newfound insanity, as Phil was cooking us dinner in his family home, he called me by her name, Hazel. I got a head rush from the shock, and I closed my eyes for a few seconds while I waited for it to pass. When I opened my eyes again, my grandmother appeared in front of me, where I stood by the stove, smiling at me for the first time since she had appeared posthumously. I started screaming. Weeks of no sleep, being haunted by your dead grandmother, will eventually make you lose your mind. Phil couldn't calm me down and ended up calling my parents to come and get me. No one else could see her standing there smiling, her mouth twisted more to the right than I remembered. Her eyes followed me wherever I went in the room, but she remained in place. Maybe we need to take her to see a specialist, I heard my mother say to my father as I sobbed in the back seat of the car. She already has a doctor. There's something not right about her. Not anymore. She needs to see a psychiatrist or something. But the specialist, who prescribed me even more pills, told me repeatedly that at 17, I wasn't seeing my dead grandmother. You just have clinical exhaustion. You'll be fine. That night, I took the new pills I had been given to put me to sleep, only to be woken up by the feeling of hands around my neck, crushing my windpipe. I opened my eyes to see my grandmother standing over me as I lay in bed, unable to move. What a shame, my grandmother hissed, her voice deep and not at all the sweet, sing-song voice she had in life. I needed her to stop haunting me. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I fought to get the words out. I would do anything to trade places with you. Anything. Her mouth pulled up slowly on the right side. Anything. I was gasping in the dark. No, not gasping. Choking. Choking on something in my throat. A snake crawled into my mouth and was snaking its way to my stomach. I could feel my lips around its slimy body. She's awake, I heard my mother say. Couldn't she see I was being suffocated? I peeled back my dry eyelids as the snake started to move, feeling a lot like this was the end. Especially when I was met with blinding light, blinking until the room came into focus. To first see the doctor with his shaved head, who was pulling a tube out of my mouth. Then I noticed my mother to the right of me, standing up next to the bed. Father sat beside her. Furthest away from me was my grandmother, standing in the doorway, her lips taut in a wry smile. I was going to be sick. It's okay, Anne. It's okay, my mother began, stroking my hair as soon as the doctor was finished. You were in an accident, but you're okay. This wasn't happening. Or rather, this had already happened, hadn't it? I went to wipe my tears away with my right hand, but for some reason, I couldn't move it. Grandmother still stood in the doorway, now expressionless. I tried to see what was trapping my right arm, but I couldn't see anything for the sheet covering me. "You were in a car crash, darling. But my mother couldn't continue, breaking into sobs. I tried to say, "What?" but it came out all muffled and wrong. My tongue, somehow, too big for my mouth. My father was shaking his head. "You were in a car crash, Anne," Grandmother said. Her voice that had evaded me for weeks was frail and dry. "The impact tore your right arm off." No, this wasn't happening. I was shaking my head frantically. The doctor was concerned with my heart rate and hyperventilation, injecting me with something that made the world go fuzzy. Grandmother moved closer to me in my haze, still not smiling. She seemed to be talking to my parents about something, but I couldn't hear them. The drugs were too powerful. Reality eventually slipped away, and I fell into a dreamless sleep for once. When I woke up, I opened my eyes to my dimly lit bedroom at home, looking exactly as it had on the morning of the crash. My heart was pounding in my chest. I kept telling myself it was a dream. It was all just a dream. The crash, the hospital, everything. But I was too scared to move, for fear I discovered my right arm was missing. Where pirates came to die. A breath of wind slithered through the ruins and tumbled across his weathered face as he pressed the shard of limestone down the dry ashlar wall, leaving a new etched tally mark. It was a dimly lit chamber inside what was once the world's most notorious pirate prison. For him, it was a sanctuary, a place of refuge. Once the web developer for Shackleford Inc., in a city of skyscrapers, eclectic culture, and ultra-modern technology, Tom Malone scanned his Neanderthal calendar. 240 tallies made up the wall. Some were circled, and only he knew why. Gone were the titles of husband, employee, and neighbor. Given his isolated surroundings, the term castaway was more appropriate. A life filled with country club galas, company retreats, and exotic travel was lost. Survival had replaced living. Tom buttoned his slightly torn flannel shirt and grabbed his coat. He exited the chamber where the wrought iron door, rusted and bent, hung by a single hinge. He moved down the main corridor and stepped through a hollowed-out gap in the outer wall. The Rook, as it was called, was made up of 3 layers, undoubtedly to make escape near impossible for even the smartest buccaneer. If the legends were true, the Rook had seen the likes of Edward Davis and even Black Anthony. Zipping his coat, he trudged down the path to the beach. This was his routine every day. 2 laps around the island. The overcast sky produced a gloomy horizon, But that was normal for this time of year, or so he assumed. If the tallies were correct, it should be October. The sea was a gray mass of rippling currents. Tom breathed profoundly, absorbing the salty fragrance. The flow of the ambient tide took him back to simpler times when walking on a beach meant hunting for shark teeth, metal detecting for forgotten coins and jewelry, and collecting seashells that made their way into the guest bathroom. Such days seemed as far out of reach as the horizon. Suddenly, he spotted tracks. They snaked from the north before turning about just outside the rook's outer wall. He recognized the tread patterns as those of a Jeep Wrangler. Tom followed, occasionally glancing over his shoulder. When he reached the familiar bend on the beach, he heard the blast of a horn and dove behind a line of palm trees. Peering through the trunks, he noticed a docked ferry on the beach. A Jeep was climbing the ramp onto the ferry. Personnel in neon-colored jackets moved about the deck. Another search party, he thought. A mustached man in uniform, wearing the same jacket, examined an area in the sand. He spoke into his radio before moving further inland. Tom's heart leapt into his throat when he caught sight of the woman following behind. She wore a yellow raincoat, and her arms were folded tightly as the sea breezes pushed ashore. Her curls flailed and whipped, no matter what direction she faced. She said something to her uniformed companion and advanced toward the tree line. "No," Tom muttered, before slipping back from the bend. He tried to quicken his pace, but the dry sand absorbed every step. Once back in the chamber, he dropped to the floor and focused on slowing his breathing. The acoustics had almost given him away during the initial search months earlier. His heart drummed, and his temporal pulse thumped. He caught his face in the mirror, fragment by the tally wall. It had belonged to the mirror in the cabin cruiser's bathroom before Tom dismantled the $1 million yacht upon his arrival. He gazed at the worn face and graying beard. Then there was the scar, where scalding grease once landed. "Tom!" came the woman's voice. He pressed against the chamber wall like a spy, dodging a spotlight. "Mrs. Malone, we've searched the ruins before with no luck." He assumed this was the uniformed man. Tom felt his way down the chamber wall and gripped a loose stone. After a few careful tugs, it came out of its place. He reached into the cavity and pulled out the dust-covered Glock. "Tom!" Squeezing the seasoned grip, he inhaled deeply, closed his eyes, and exhaled. His mind traveled to the frost-covered day after his father was buried. Tom opened the gun cabinet and retrieved the pistol his father taught him to shoot with. "This will be yours someday," he would say at the range. Tom choked back the mist that wanted to erupt from his eyes. None of it matters now. Too much has happened. He took another lungful before pursing his lips and blowing out. He eyed the tallied wall and totaled the circled marks. 16. He suspected as much, but now he knew. One bullet remained. We need to call off the search. He called out, his voice nearer than before. That meant she was too. "No, he's here. I know it," came her distraught and shaking voice. Tom pressed harder to the wall. He hoped the ancient stone could absorb him and conceal any trace of a man desperate to remain in the shadows. "Ma'am, the weather is slowing us down, and the city cannot afford a stranded ferry with personnel on board. Would you stop if it was not if it meant putting others in danger." He ran his free hand over the scar. He traced the tight line of skin that ran from beneath his eye to the corner of his mouth. The sting had subsided long ago, but the hurt ran deep. "Please," she pleaded, "just let me look in here." The man radioed the ferry that he was making a final sweep of the old ruins, and that preparations for departure should begin immediately. For a moment, all was still. "Tom!" came the frantic echo. He slid his finger over the cold trigger. "Never again will you scar me, Maria," he whispered. A single shot rang from the remnants of a place where pirates came to die. The Rougarou. Raylan Stone was installing a strut on a Toyota when I burst into the Texaco station. I ducked under the lift, slipped in a patch of oil, and cracked my head on the garage floor. "Mais la, Delilah Jane, are you pining for a concussion?" The handsome Cajun scooped me up and set me on a stack of tires. He wiped grease off his hands and gently palpated the back of my head. "You're not bleeding, Cher, but there's a lump. You might have cracked your skull." Holding my throbbing head, I mumbled, "I'm just dizzy." "Why'd you bust in here like a rabid wolf was after you?" "Lucinda's missing." "Lucinda Defoe? Isn't she your cousin?" "Yeah. Her foster mom said she didn't come home from the roller rink last night. That teenager's wild as a colt. This ain't the first time she's run off. That's why I've got to have my truck." A muscle vibrated in his lean jaw. "It's not ready. Baton Rouge ain't bringing the new radiator until tomorrow." "Then let me borrow something. Antoinette thinks that Mississippi River pirates got her." He threw back his head and laughed. "Antoinette watches too much television. She swore that a UFO beamed Lucinda to Mars last year. And a few months ago, she told the sheriff that the Rougarou ate the girl." I shuddered, imagining the man-wolf. 8 feet tall, he had eyes like fire coals and teeth like a bear's. He hunted dogs and kids who wandered into the bayou. My headstrong cousin liked to sneak out there. Gambling with her life turned her on. Giving me the side eye, Raylan said in Cajun French, "Tonnerre mes chiens. Tell me you don't believe in the Rougarou." No, of course not. He's a legend, not real at all. Invented to scare bratty children." His lips quirked. Irritated that I hadn't fooled him, I squared my shoulders. "I'm guessing that she's at the fish camp with Marcus. That's where she was last time. I need to bring her back. You're not going anywhere with a busted noggin. I fingered my skull and winced. It's sore, not busted. Have you met Marcus? Haven't had the pleasure. You're lucky. He's mean as a snapping turtle. Everybody swears he eats water moccasins and scorpions for breakfast. Imagine what he could do to a 16-year-old. Are you gonna lend me a vehicle or not? Sorry, I don't have a loaner. Muttering, I shoved myself off the tires and bumped into his hard chest. Steadying me, he smoothed a curl off my forehead. I leaned into his palm for an instant, and then stepped back. My friends said he was crazy about me, but he'd never even stolen a kiss. Raylan Stone was a southern gent, a throwback to the days when a man left a calling card and asked your daddy if he could court you. I didn't have a daddy. Neither did Lucinda. I licked my lips and tried again. My cousins had nothing but bad breaks since her parents died. If she's with Marcus, she's with a critter as dangerous as the Rougarou. He sanded the beard stubble on his jaw with the heel of his hand. Look, I'd drive you if I could. But the mayor's coming to pick up the Toyota. I've got to finish the struts and rotate the tires by 5 o'clock. Tell her it's an emergency. Narrowing his dark eyes, he stepped forward and caught my chin. He stood rock still, his warm breath wafting over my face. I trembled, thinking he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to. Instead, he whispered, I was a medic in the army, not a neurologist. But I'd say you dodged that concussion. Your pupils are equal and react to the light. That's a hard head you've got, taking a hit like that on concrete. Yeah, my head's not made out of paper mache. I'm fine. Prove it. Let me see you walk the seam in the floor. Hoping he would relent about driving me, I traversed the crack like a tightrope walker, turned, and came back. My head hurt, but I didn't wobble. Satisfied, his brows drawn in a scowl, he picked up a box wrench and twirled it through his fingers. All right, Cher. You win. I'll let you take old Jeb. Go to the fish camp, and then come straight back. Deal, old Jeb? Oh la la. Raylan's rebuilt 1940 International Harvester was a thing of power and beauty. He didn't let anybody drive that truck. Maybe he was crazy about me. I resisted a sudden urge to kiss him. Go wait in the portico, Delilah Jane. I'll bring him around. Hurry before I change my damn mind. Its wiper blades flip-flopping over the divided windshield. The old truck rumbled into the portico a few minutes later. Raylan hopped out and cocked his fists on his narrow hips. You ever drove a double-wheel rear end? No, but it can't be all that different from my Ram truck. Different enough. You lock up the brakes, you'll skip the tires, and the rear end'll get away from you. Don't drive old Jeb over 40. Heavy rain's fixing to start. I'll drive him 10 under at all times. I swear. That'll be a first. You doing the speed limit. I put my foot on the wet running board and slipped. I fell backwards. As Raylan cupped my hiney to catch me, I heard him draw a sharp breath. Careful, darlin'. It's slippery when wet. Dieu. He slid his hands to my waist and boosted me onto the seat. I stole a look in the rearview mirror. Red cheeks, lawsy, an impish twinkle in his eyes. He said, I dropped a green diamond 214 cubic inch engine into old Jeb last month. Feel the vibration? That calfskin seat's kind of tickly, ain't it? Yes. The engine was vibrating a place I'd never admit to in 1,000 years. Or maybe it was a visceral memory of Raylan's hands on my tail. Oh la la, with hot pepper on top. The engine ain't broke in yet, so keep an eye on the tachometer as you run through the gears. Don't rev him up, you hear? I'll treat him like a baby possum. He snorted and shook his head. You don't have to go that far. Hey, let me adjust the rearview mirror for you. The dang thing likes to stick. As he leaned across me, his fingertips skimmed my thigh. He turned his head and gazed at me for several breathless seconds. I saw a muscle throb in his cheek and heat flash in his eyes. He positioned the mirror and stood back, flushed from head to toe. I stared at the gauges as though I'd never seen anything so fascinating. Okay, see if Lucinda's out there, and then head straight back here. If she ain't at the fish camp, the sheriff can send the Cajun Navy after Antoinette's river pirates. I chuckled as he shut the door. Cranking the window down, I was about to wisecrack that he looked like a daddy sending his truck off to kindergarten. But he gazed at me with such solemnity that the words died in my throat. Watch your back, darlin'. I don't believe in your Rougarou. But if something were to happen to you, nothing's gonna happen, and he's not my Rougarou. I forced a laugh. That smelly old monster would make an awful pet. Looking even more solemn, he placed his warm hand on the back of my neck. You sure you know how to drive a big truck? Does a duck wear waterproof underwear? Watch me. His fingers tightened. I'd like to watch you, and not in duck drawers. Damn, woman, you wear that truck like Victoria's Secret. Ooh, I flushed again, thrilled. Maybe Raylan Stone wasn't the gentleman I'd taken him for. Buckle up. There ain't a shoulder harness, but the lap belt will keep you from going anywhere. Not that you're gonna hit nothing, right? I touched 2 fingers to my eyebrow. Right. Don't worry about me. Frowning, he churned his hair with both hands. Quit worrying, Raylan. I'm calm as a clam. Calm as a clam fixing to be deep fried. I'll be back in 2 hours. I pushed in the clutch, eased into first gear, and drove into the rain. It wouldn't be long until dark. I was on the highway near the swamp when a lightning bolt snapped out of the clouds. It unleashed a torrent of rain. Within minutes, the deep ditches on either side of the highway overflowed. Rooster tails sprayed out of old Jeb's fenders and hit the windshield. The window fogged up. Blinded, I stopped to clear the glass with my sleeve. I glimpsed movement out of the corner of my eye. A huge black thing lurched out of the swamp and fixed a pair of glowing red eyes on me. The Rougarou. I jammed the gas pedal to the floorboard, not looking back, not looking aside, looking only through the foggy windshield and screaming, screaming, screaming. As I shifted into second, the rear end broke loose. I jerked the wheel in the direction of the skid and felt the truck catch up. But then I skidded the opposite way and overcorrected. Storm water snatched old Jeb toward the ditches as we reeled back and forth. Waves exploded over the hood. Steam boiled out of the engine, black smoke pouring out of its stacks. A dump truck appeared in the mirror. Roaring like a bear, it smashed into us. Old Jeb spun a 360 and sailed into the ditch. Sudden deceleration. My hips snapped against the lap belt. My knees slammed into the dashboard. My forehead bounced off the steering wheel. Dark water rose over the hood and sprayed in around the windows and door seals. It boiled out of the dash, the air vents, the gas pedal, the floorboards. The ammeter glowed bright red, and then the turbid water snuffed it out. The cab submerged. Locked in a cold, black tomb, I fought to unbuckle the seatbelt. Water rose to my chin. Choking, I struggled for air. White-hot knives stabbed my chest. I heard a dog barking, and then a gruff voice. "Get to the air pocket, or you'll become a ghost like me." The seatbelt buckle popped open. I pushed off the steering wheel and hit my head on the roof. Found the air pocket. Sucked sharp, terrified gulps of oxygen. Old Jeb groaned and nosed deeper into the ditch. I fumbled for the door handle. The door wouldn't open. It couldn't. The water pressure outside was too great. The door wouldn't open until the pressure equalized. That would be when the cab was full of water. By then, I would have drowned. Raylan Stone would tow the truck out and stare at me in disapproval. I'd promised not to hurt old Jeb. Dragging in a lungful of air, I ducked underwater and tried to grab the window crank. The freezing water struck my head like a hammer and knocked the air out of my lungs. I caromed to the ceiling and hit my head. I can't do it. It's too deep. It's too cold. I can't get out. I'm gonna die. Something appeared in the darkness. Brown fur, claws, teeth. I felt the Rougarou touching me, breathing on me. I screamed in mindless terror. Roll down the window. Golden eyes, a white bib, and speckled paws appeared. It was the little brown dog that I'd lost to the Rougarou when I was 5. Barks pushed my head underwater and guided my frozen hand to the crank. Together, we rolled the window down. "Get out, Delilah Jane. Go." My face hit the ditch bank. It was too close, choking off escape. I was underwater. My lungs burned. I had to take a breath. If I did, I would drown. If I didn't, I would suffocate. I would die no matter what I did. "I'm gonna bite you." Sudden, sharp pain in my butt. I spasmed, twisted, heard my scream carry away my last breath. My head broke out of the water. I clawed the bank, shoved my feet against the truck, and crawled onto the flooded road. Coughed, sucked cold wind. Where was my dog? The rain stopped, as though someone had flipped a switch. Low in the northeast, the wolf moon was waxing full. Tonight, the Rougarou would reach his zenith of power, its diesel engine roaring. The dump truck crested the hill. Tires squalled, and a shadow rushed at me. I saw the head of a wolf mounted on the massive, black-furred body of a man. I turned to run. The Rougarou stabbed my back with his claws and sank his canines into my neck. Sterile white room. White blanket trapping my legs. Panicked, I started kicking. "Calm down, Delilah Jane. Look at me," gripping my shoulder. Raylan Stone stroked my cheek. His shirt bore a picture of a diesel truck and a caption, "Black smoke, don't mean it's broke." I visualized the dump truck in my mirror, smoke billowing from the stacks. "Don't let it get me." "Shh, baby. You're in the emergency room. Nothing's gonna get you, darlin'," but a frightening kaleidoscope whirled in my mind. Lucinda was inside the submerged truck. As I struggled to free her, the Rougarou surfaced from the dark water and tore out her throat. I screamed and screamed. I heard Raylan's low-voiced command. "Open your eyes, Cher. It's just a dream. That's all it is. You got a concussion when you smacked your head in the garage. The Rougarou's killing my cousin." "No." The sheriff picked her up at the fish camp. "You had a bad dream, baby. Just a bad dream. It's over." I covered my face and wept. The mechanic gathered me into his arms and began humming a Cajun melody, his vibrato flowing in rich, warm waves out of his chest into mine. As I settled into him, he whispered, "I won't let anything happen to you. I swear. You're safe, love. Safe." He cradled me in his left arm and gently pushed the hair out of my eyes. Cut like banjo strings, his powerful arms were colored in ink. Tattooed on his right wrist was a knife, twin arrows, and "De oppresso liber." Is that Latin? Shh, don't talk. But I needed to make sure I was alive, that what I was seeing was real, that I wasn't dreaming anymore. I touched his wrist, warm and strong, pulsing. real. I traced my finger over the tattoo and felt him tremble. "What's the tattoo for, Raylan?" "It's the Special Forces crest. From oppression, we will liberate them." Like he'd liberated me from the nightmare. So I didn't wreck old Jeb? His eyebrows shot up like question marks. "I don't let anybody drive my truck." "Oh, wait, you drove him in your dream." Heaving a shaky sigh, I laced my fingers through his. It was so real, so awful. "Will you take me home?" "Later, darling. We're gonna stay and keep you awake. Concussion protocol." His eyes twinkling, his lips quirked in the mischievous grin I was beginning to love. "The next time you come sliding into my garage, I'll outfit you with a crash helmet." Smiling, I snuggled into his arms. Raylan Stone was exactly the gentleman I'd dreamed he was. Maybe tomorrow I'd steal a kiss. Bloodlines. The first time I noticed something was off, I was 13. It was a school night, and I got out of bed late in the night to sneak a soda from the fridge. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the television in the living room. It was unusual for anyone to be up this late. My dad sat in his chair with the light off, watching the late news. The headline at the bottom read, "The Nightshade Killer Strikes Again. 15 victims confirmed." I watched silently for a moment while the reporter talked about a lack of clues and how the police seemed to be baffled. I remember the way my father's lip twitched as he sipped his whiskey, almost like a smirk. He noticed me standing in the doorway, and in a blink, his expression softened, becoming familiar and warm. "Hey, champ, can't sleep?" he asked as he muted the TV and rose from his seat. I told myself I had imagined the smirk. I must have. The encounter stirred memories of hearing my dad coming and going at late hours. How closed off he could be at times, and how he would sidestep Mom's questions of where he was going and who he was with when they fought behind closed doors, thinking I couldn't hear. He was hiding something. A few weeks later, they had a huge fight. Mom accused Dad of having an affair, which he denied. Mom and I ended up leaving for a few months that summer to stay with my grandparents. Dad eventually convinced Mom he was not having any affairs, that his problem was with gambling, and he was getting help. I'm not sure if Mom totally believed him, but we did move back home, and things did seem to get better. The late-night outings stopped, and the tension at home faded with time. Eventually, the memory faded too. The killings had stopped, and the Nightshade Killer became an urban legend, the subject of true crime, podcasts, and late-night horror stories kids told at sleepovers and on camping trips. The police moved the case onto the cold pile, and most thought he had died or been locked up for some other crime. Then, when I was in my late 20s, they found another body. The same victim type, the same ritualistic markings, and the same precision. The Nightshade Killer was back. That night, I visited my dad for dinner. As soon as I stepped into the house, I noticed something was off. The house seemed cleaner than usual. I could smell bleach in the air, thick enough to sting my nose. My dad was his usual self, calm and collected, always in control. He explained the smell away as a laundry mishap. He was still not used to doing it after Mom passed last year. During dinner, we talked mostly about me. Dad wanted all the details of how my life was going, all that I was willing to provide anyway. He asked about my work, life in general, and if I was seeing anyone yet. That is when I saw it. A faint red stain on the cuff of his sleeve. I got a good look as he poured a glass of whiskey for himself. The sight stirred something in the back of my mind that kept me up that night. That stain wasn't wine. It wasn't ketchup. It was blood. I knew it was. I remember the smirk. I needed proof. Real proof. The next day, I used my spare key to let myself in while Dad was out. My hands shook and felt more nervous than I expected. Not at the prospect of getting caught, but of the possibility of what I might find. The smell of bleach wasn't as strong, but it was accompanied by something else now. Something almost metallic. I made my way through the house systematically until I got to the basement door. It was locked. I don't remember the basement ever being locked. Using a bobby pin and a skill I picked up as a rebellious teenager, I clumsily picked the lock. The metallic smell hit me as the door opened. My stomach twisted as I descended the stairs, and the fluorescent light flickered to life overhead. The air was damp and cool, and as I reached the bottom and turned the corner, I saw them. Trophies. Photographs of women with terrified looks on their faces, and a date written on each one, neatly arranged on a workbench. Next to them, a stack of old newspaper clippings dating back to the first Nightshade killings. In the far corner, a freezer with a padlock and a collection of knives laid out across the top, looking freshly cleaned. I didn't need to open the freezer. I already knew what I would find. A creak on the stairs made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come down here, champ." I turned slowly as Dad came around the stairs. His hands in his pockets, he watched me for a moment. His face showed no sign of fear at being found out, or anger that I had intruded. It was something more like patience, like he had been waiting for this moment my whole life. "It was you the entire time." My voice barely worked. I wanted to run and to throw up, but I couldn't move from that spot. Some sick part of me, something twisted and wretched in my blood, had to hear the word. I needed to hear him say them. You killed them all? Yes. No hesitation, no remorse, just calm and collected as always, and merely stating a fact. And now you have a choice to make. At that moment, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. My mouth went dry as I tried to swallow. I wasn't sure if I was afraid of him or of how much of him was in me. I felt my lip twitch almost involuntarily. Maybe I was afraid of the choice I already knew I would make. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.